On October 1973, a coordinated attack by Syria and Egypt caught the Israeli army completely off guard. After 20 days of bitter fighting, the IDF managed to fend off and even gain some ground both on the Syrian and Egyptian fronts. However, the Israeli public outraged and demanded answers. How could the entire intelligence community have missed war preparations on two fronts? And so a committee was formed. And the committee was made out of two Supreme Court judges and two former IDF chief of staff. One of its tasks was to identify how the IDF intelligence failed so badly. The IDF intelligence had always acknowledged the Israeli army had a severe numerical disadvantage and no equipment advantage to compensate for it. However, they emphasized that Israel's tactical advantage was in command and control, meaning the integration of large forces from different branches into coordinated efforts. Based on this, the IDF intelligence vehemently argued that without a significant game changers in the air or in the armor corps, the neighboring Arab countries were unlikely to initiate an attack on Israel. This belief prevailed even though there was clear knowledge of the latest modern anti-aircraft batteries arriving to Syria and Egypt. The second game changer was also not a secret. Saga missiles were known to the West from the Vietnam conflict, and the effectiveness of a portable guided anti-tank missile was already known in Israel. The officers who created the concept of low probability did not change their minds even in the face of these clear red flags. And there were some other major signs the intelligence acknowledged. Both the Syrian and Egyptian army were in attack formations. Family of Soviet advisor left the region in a hurry 2 days before the war. This was considered by most analysts to be a red flag, but not enough to change the low probability of war status. A religious decree by high-level Islamic figures for soldiers to eat and drink during the fast of Ramadan. Secret agent as SIGINT data announcing a war is within days. It was clear to the investigation committee or to anyone who was exposed to the data at hand that not a lack of information was responsible for the failure, but rather a lack of ability to reasonably interpret the information. It was also clear that a state with no strategic depth could not afford such an avoidable intelligence blunder. The investigation committee came to the conclusion that the hubris derived from the 6 Days War victory created a false understanding of the world and even worse, how safe is Israel in the immediate area. Or the more we need to change our understanding of our world, our perception of ourselves, the more likely we will be struck by mental blindness. This led to a string of recommendations. The analysts who tried to raise the alarms were reprimanded by their superior officer for stepping out of line. Therefore, the committee stated that army hierarchy is ill-suited for intelligence work and a different approach should be endorsed. A new procedure has been introduced where any analyst can issue a minority report, meaning an opinion different from the convention that once has been defended in front of their peers will be sent all the way up to the Prime Minister. A special devil advocate unit is to be founded with the sole responsibility of challenging the convention thinking and try to take a different look at issues. Early in 2004, a Syrian department analyst detected a large concrete cube which appeared in a remote secluded area east of Syria. There were no roads leading to it, nor there were fences or watchtowers. Just a large structure with barely any people around it. It looked like someone has built a very expensive goat pen, one analyst recalled, and so it was left unsolved, low-priority issue at the Syrian Department of the Army Intelligence. Until one evening, one Major J has decided to take a look at it. He measured the structure and the size reminded him of something, but nothing he can remember immediately. Naturally, the story have more than one version. But what we do know is that a few days later, Major J decided to compare it with a similar concrete cube from the other side of the world. He immediately recognized the Syrian Cube as a plutonium reactor, very similar to the one North Korea have. The same night, he wrote an emergency report to the rest of the intelligence and defense community. By all accounts, it was met with a complete ridicule. However, a procedure must be obeyed, and Major J had to defend his theory. The question arose from his theory were as follows. Any reactor needs a constant supply of water, and the structure is more than 1 kilometer away from the Euphrates River. How will he get his coolant from? A large pipe is being dug into the ground at night and covered just before daybreak. Without special attention at the right time from the night image satellite, we must have missed it. There is no roads or people around the structure, no heavy machinery, trucks, or electricity lines. In fact, there is nothing that will indicate that such a major project is being built. How is the raw material and personnel will be supplied? The materials, as the workers, arriving from the river during the night. The whole project has been planned and executed with the knowledge it is only a matter of time before aerial photos will notify Western intelligence agencies. This is the reason there is no fences or infrastructure around the building. This kind of project must involve hundreds, maybe thousands of people. Considering our cover of Syria and the amount of signage we get from Syrian networks, it is impossible to assume we know nothing about it. This is why only a handful of people in Syria know about this project. The whole project is constructed by foreigners, North Korean or Iranian, maybe even Chinese construction workers. A plutonium reactor costs billions of US dollars. We know that Syria is on the verge of bankruptcy. Who and why is funding this project? There's a proxy war in the Middle East and the world stage for quite some time. On the one hand, there's the US, Israel, and the Sunni world facing the axis of Shia and Iran with its allies in Syria, Lebanon, maybe even Iraq. In the struggle to gain political ground in the world and the Middle East, Iran would benefit from a proof that the USA is merely a paper tiger. The reactor would signal to the states in the region that they should find another superpower to ally with. This project, Major J continued, might be green-lighted by China, who encouraged North Korea to get involved, but it can be funded by the Iranian in the hope that once activated, the reactor will change the balance of power in the Middle East. Once defended, Major J theory did not sound more reasonable. However, no one could positively disprove the theory, and following a standard procedure, his report went all the way to the IDF Chief of Staff, Minister of Defense, and the Prime Minister. None of them treated it as a serious matter that deserved urgency or special attention. Almost offhanded, the PM at the time, Ehud Olmert, assigned the Mossad to assemble a team to investigate if the strange secluded structure is indeed a nuclear reactor. After a short investigation, the Mossad team learned of an international nuclear convention that will take place in Vienna in a few weeks' time. They followed the head of the Syrian nuclear program, Ibrahim Uthman, to his apartment and waited for the right time to sneak into his room. With a special memory stick, the team downloaded the content of Uthman's laptop and rushed back to Israel. According to the Mossad agent, once the memory stick was decrypted, it just lay there on someone's desk for almost 2 weeks. Such was the low priority that was given to the mission. When the analyst finally took a look at the data on the memory stick, he testified, "My eyes went blank. It was almost a complete nuclear reactor, merely 6 months from being operative." Subsequently, the information was rushed back to the Prime Minister, and a few months later, 8 IAF fighters managed to avoid Syrian air defense and destroy the concrete cube. Less than 4 years later, a civil war erupted in Syria, and the entire East Syria region has fallen to the hand of the Islamic State ISIS.